Welcome, everyone. Welcome online. Welcome to the live stream. And thank you for joining us. My name is Stephen Sim, and I will be the moderator tonight, your guide through all the failure. Please be aware that due to the nature of this event, there will be some adult language. Now that I've made that disclaimer, I can officially say, welcome to Fuck Up Nights, hosted from Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. We are live streaming this event from an undisclosed location in Winnipeg, which is on Treaty 1 territory, the traditional gathering place of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Dakota, Dene, Métis, and OG Cree nations. Fuck Up Nights is a global movement and event series that shares stories of professional failure. Tech Manitoba and North Forge have joined forces to bring this unique event to our city. We are excited to be here today. We couldn't make this happen without our generous partners and sponsors. Our presenting partners, Tech Manitoba and North Forge, as well, AVent Pro, Kaput, and Bara Sales and Distribution. Now, before we start the event, I'd like to go over some of the housekeeping items. Keep in mind, this is a live show. That is, we're relying on technology to work. So be prepared for anything. For the first 100 people who registered for the event, you received a viewing package kit. We hope you're enjoying the goodies from Bara Sales and Distribution. We will also be having 3 speakers today, back-to-back, with a Q&A for each speaker following their presentation. So please post any questions you have in the comment section on the live stream. We'll be monitoring this throughout the event. At the end of the event, head back over to Remo to network and mingle with the event attendees and our speakers. You won't want to miss the after party. Before we dive into what tonight is all about, I'd like to provide the event partners, Tech Manitoba and North Forge, to bring some greetings. Please welcome Joelle Foster, CEO of North Forge.
On behalf of North Forge Technology Exchange, welcome to Failure Night. It really doesn't matter what you call it. It's an amazing event that highlights entrepreneurs who have pushed themselves outside their comfort zone and failed. But I don't like the word failure. I like to use growth when it comes to a setback on the way to success. Another way I like to frame failure is to say failing forward, because failure is a word that sometimes gets stuck in our mental pathways when it's only temporary. My name is Joelle Foster, and I'm the CEO of North Forge. We are now a hybrid incubator and accelerator and a partner of innovation for the province of Manitoba. We just launched June 1st a new founders program that helps tech-enabled entrepreneurs and innovators take their business from validation to becoming a Seed A company. We also run one of the largest publicly accessible fabrication labs in North America, 13,000 square feet of advanced manufacturing equipment. We are so proud to partner with Tech Manitoba on Fuck Up Nights. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Joelle. And now I'd like to introduce Kay Gardner, CEO of Tech Manitoba.
Thanks, Stephen, and welcome everyone. I'm Kay Gardner, CEO at Tech Manitoba, where, as the name suggests, we represent the province's growing tech sector. We're an industry-led association working to help tech and tech-enabled companies thrive and grow in Manitoba through collaboration, education, and promotion. Tonight is just one great example of how we work to bring people together to connect, explore ideas, and build a strong community. I was first introduced to Fuck Up Nights almost exactly 4 years ago. I was at a conference in Helsinki, Finland, where I gathered with about 4,000 other people on a dark, cold winter evening to hear open and honest stories of failure from global founders, including Spotify's Daniel Ek. That willingness to share those stories, the embarrassing ones that people don't really want to talk about, was powerful. Since then, people from the Tech Manitoba team have attended Fuck Up Nights around North America. In fact, this global movement has seen events in more than 320 cities, in 90 countries, with 15,000 stories of failure being shared with over 1 million attendees. Tech Manitoba is truly pleased to join forces with North Forge to bring you this unique event to our province. Our hope is that this evening we can create a space that takes the stigma out of failure, a space where we are inspired to share and learn. We don't all have to make the same mistakes. Let's share that communal knowledge. We're stronger when we work together. Be sure to stick around after the event on Remo and network with our community and share your own stories and listen to more from others. So with that, good luck, and remember, at some point, you will fuck it up.
Thank you again to Tech Manitoba and North Forge for bringing us this event. Now, let's jump into what this event is all about.
Failure is everywhere. In business, communications, technology, politics, art. But we're constantly told that failure is wrong, that it's shameful. Nobody talks about it. Well, we do. Fuck Up Inc. is a global movement that helps people break free from the paradigms that limit their lives. We use failure to encourage difficult, vulnerable, and meaningful conversations. Fuck Up Inc. was created in Mexico in 2012 when 5 friends got drunk on mezcal and someone asked, why does everybody always talk about the Zuckerbergs and the Gates of the world, but no one ever shares their failures? Since then, we've worked to share the failure through initiatives that challenge the status quo and transform failure into radical solutions that help people make better decisions.
Welcome to Fuck Up Nights, or as I like to call it, Fuck Up Year. Anyone else have a strange year? But tonight we're going to be celebrating something else. We're going to be celebrating failure. And that's something that we don't often celebrate. And I think we should. Now, we're not going to be celebrating the kind of failure that comes from incompetence. No. We're going to be focused on the failure that comes and brings us resilience. The focus is going to be on failure that teaches us. But wait. What is failure? Even in the dictionary, there's no definition relating failure to learning and overcoming obstacles. And we need to change this. And I swear, I promise, by the end of today, we're going to change every single dictionary definition of failure. Because failure is universal. No one learned to read or write perfectly on their first attempt. No, we had trial and error. We all have, and we will all keep on failing. Forever. You will fail. Now, there's an old saying, you learn something new every day. Well, to me, that means you're going to fail every day because we learn more from our failures than our successes, and failure is the best teacher. So now, okay, am I going to just talk about cliches all evening? No. But we are going to dive in to what failure is. Failure is uncomfortable. Now, even though failure happens every day in the world, we're still so afraid of it. Failure is awkward. It sucks. It takes us out of our comfort zone. And we hope to go through our day with never experiencing it. We avoid failure. And when it happens to other people, we laugh. Or we feel sorry for them, depending on what kind of person you are, but we're just grateful it didn't happen to us. But failure is dynamic, and that means it's temporary, just like success is temporary. So let's not dwell on it. We shouldn't dwell on our successes or on our failures, because failure is relative. Something that is a terrible, epic mistake for some is just a fresh start and a clean slate for others. Some people take failure so seriously, while others take failure in stride, like me. I take failure very seriously. But really, I think the important thing is to not be afraid. Don't fear the failure, embrace the failure, because failure can lead to innovation. See, when we lose the fear of failing, we can achieve greater things. We're freer to discover things that we would never have found before. So let's take the example of X. It used to be called Google X. And how many people have heard of X? And I wish that I could see a show of hands right now, but I can't. X's mission is to invent and launch moonshot technologies that aim to make the world a radically better place. They call themselves a moonshot factory. And what's moonshot? Well, I'm glad you asked. A moonshot is defined by X as the intersection of a big problem, a radical solution, and breakthrough technology. But the way they approach projects at X is really quite interesting. You see, what they try to do is they try to kill a project. They try to make a project fail by focusing on the hardest problems first. And not only that, they reward their staff when a project gets killed from failure. Do the hard work first. See if the hard problem even has a possible solution. That makes a lot of sense. So in case some of you had not heard of X, you've probably heard of some of the successful projects that have come out of X. Like Waymo, the self-driving car, or smart glasses, the hands-free wearable computing devices. And just between you and me, if I have smart glasses on, I want my car to be self-driving. The fact is, failure is a state of mind. And as I said before, there are many definitions of failure and what it takes to fail. So a failure to me might not be a failure to you. So here's a quote attributed to Thomas Edison during his quest to build the light bulb. He said, "I have not failed, I have just found 10,000 ways that it won't work." I'll just have a quick disclaimer. It probably wasn't Thomas Edison who failed 10,000 times. He probably hired a whole bunch of other people to do all of that. He just gets the credit. But let's all fail together. Because we don't end up being defined by our failures. We end up bigger and smarter and stronger than those failures were. Today we have 3 stories of failures. These aren't cautionary tales, but stories of encouragement. Stories to let you know it's okay, that we've all been there, and that we can push through it, and we can get to the other side. We have 3 great guests with 3 great stories, and I look forward to sharing them with you. Well, I think we're ready for our first speaker. Don't you think that? I think that we're all ready for our first speaker. So let me introduce. Our first speaker has a very strange allergy to the cold. He's been on not 1, but 2 reality TV shows. As well, he has had the chance to pitch one of his businesses to Prince Charles. Let's hear it for Bryce North.
Thank you so much for having me here, and thanks for the awesome introduction. I believe a community that supports failure is such an important thing. So I want to thank all of you at home who are watching us talk about our most fucked up moments. Now, I believe that our rock bottom moments are the ones that truly define us and our risk tolerance. They are those memories that we hold close to every decision that we make while we quietly ask ourselves, can things really get worse than this? 5 years ago, I made a decision and took a risk that changed everything on who I am. But to understand the importance of this decision, we need to go back to 2011 and talk about why this is such an important part of my entrepreneurial career. By my last semester in university, I was already on to my third startup, still recovering from the failure from my most recent, which we installed breathalyzer machines in nightclubs and sold advertising on them. More of the story, I love the ad world and finding unique ways to display ads. Now, both my previous startups had a common failure. Both my business partners decided to quit when things got rough and we ran out of money. So I swore to myself right then and there that I was going to find someone just as dedicated, just as committed, that when things got really hard and tough, they wouldn't quit. Drive and commitment. Those are the two things I was looking for. Now, my third idea came in my marketing class one day as the topic of ad engagement blurred in the background. And I was thinking about, why did my last business fail? Was it because my business partner quitting, or was it because of lack of engagement on these breathalyzers? At that point, I heard my professor say something along the lines of, people need to see themselves in ads in order to be effective. Now, she wasn't being literal, but man, did I take it that way. Like a lightning bolt just hit me. I felt like a genius. Mirrors. Let's just put ads in mirrors. And that's how AdValve Media was born. We created these really cool interactive mirrors that play ads right around a reflection, and we put them in high traffic venues. I remember telling to myself, I just fixed our ad engagement problem. And I became mirror obsessed, spending what I had left of my student loans to find out how to develop this technology. Now, my best friend at the time, he really loved what I was doing. And I remember him pitching me to join this company during a drive one day. I remember pulling over, looking him in the eye and saying, are you sure you want to do this? He smiled and said, I'm all in. I said, if we do this, we go all the way. There's no stopping. I'm trusting you with this. He said, I promise. Let's get rich. And from there, I ended up bringing two of my other friends to be my engineers. And I had a cool technology, a team full of my friends, and this attitude and this belief that I was going to take over the advertising world. I felt on top of the world. And then we started getting noticed. We started winning awards in Canada and the US, and started being featured in all news outlets we could think of. All this hype made us believe we had something too good to give up. And I kept pushing my team because of it. Everyone told us how amazing this technology was, so failure wasn't even on the to-do list. Now, fast forward to 2014, things were pretty rough. My team was on their last lifeline, and we had 60 days left in the bank. We needed a miracle. I had this Hail Mary of an idea to apply to Communitech, which is one of Canada's largest accelerators in Kitchener, just shy of Toronto. They promised $70,000 to get into the program, which allows us to extend our burn for the remainder of the year and find more investment, as well as access to mentors that can fix our growth. I remember applying for this, and in 30 days we found it, we got accepted, and I was excited because of that. I was excited, and you know what? We were the only one out of 12 people that got accepted outside of Ontario, and out of hundreds of applications, we got accepted. This had to have been a sign, right? I at least thought so. So we spent the next 30 days trying to raise as much capital as possible, and we talked to everyone we knew, and we were successful. Now, part of me didn't feel so confident about the money that we raised because majority was from my friend's side of the family. But I mean, hey, $70,000 guaranteed cash as soon as we get there. We get paid that off in a couple months. I mean, this just seemed like a safe bet, right? Again, I believe that. So 2 weeks later, after we raised the funds, I left off the Kitchener and I went alone. Now, my girlfriend at the time, we decided to do the long distance thing, and my team, well, they decided to stay home and let me pave the way. When I arrived in Kitchener, I cannot describe the feeling of being in a tech-focused city. I remember walking to this accelerator, looking up and saying, I'm home. I met people from Google and Microsoft, and all I could think was, this is where I need to be. This is who I am. Now, 2 weeks after I got settled, I remember meeting with the funding manager from the Ontario government to grant us our money. I sat down and looked at him, smiling, saying, well, when do we get our money? And he said, Bryce, the money's not guaranteed. There's no money. I remember sitting back in my chair, not believing a single word he said, and said, there's no money. This is not guaranteed. There's no money. I ran back to that accelerator to talk to them and ask them what's going on. But they ensured that there's capital just to go back and talk to them. So I did. I went back the very next day. I sat down in that same chair. I looked at him and said, this is guaranteed. He's like, Bryce, you have to apply for this. You can find out in 6 months. I said, 6 months? I don't have 6 months. I mean, I got bills to pay. What am I going to tell my friends here? This is borrowed family money? I mean, what am I going to do? He's like, Bryce, calm down. There's another option. We can actually apply for half that amount for $35K and find out in 30 days. What's it going to be? I risked so much to get here at this point that I wasn't feeling like a betting man. That money wasn't enough, but at this point, I couldn't risk losing anymore. So we opted for half the funds. When those 30 days came, I could not believe what I read. I opened up that email, and we got rejected. I remember calling up the funding manager and asking, well, why did we reject and what happened? And he said, Bryce, we don't fund two of the exact same companies. I said, exactly the same? What does that mean? I remember Googling this company and seeing they ripped us off identically. They stole our branding, our wording, our website, verbatim, word for word, everything. And the kicker is, they applied 2 weeks before we didn't got that funding. Now, I should take this as a sign to give up, but I mean, we know me by now, and I wasn't quitting. But the hardest part was trying to tell my team. I remember picking up the phone and calling my business partner. I hung up right away. I couldn't handle that. I thought I'm going to call my engineers first, get that out of the way, get their support, and then use them to talk to my business partner. I phoned up my engineers. They were mad, extremely mad, and they quit on the spot. You know what? Screw what I said. I'm in Kitchener. Engineers are a dime a dozen. I'll find others. I called my business partner. My heart was racing. I couldn't breathe. When he picked up the phone, I stumbled through that conversation, trying to deliver whatever news I can remember. Saying he was mad is an understatement. Saying he was livid was an understatement. I've never seen so angry in my life. He pulled the remainder of the funding and quit on the spot and hung up on me. I couldn't breathe. I was on the verge of tears at this point. I had to get out. I had to leave. And I remember just leaving that building saying, I need to go home. I need to find my bike and ride home. I go outside and it's pouring. Perfect. Least of my concerns. But you know what? Feels like a bad scene in the movie. I go to my bike got stolen. Not believing this, not believing these string of events, I go to the nearby pub, which is around the corner, to call my girlfriend and vent. She apologizes about the bad timing and ends up breaking up with me. I lost my girlfriend, my friends, and 5 years of building a business because someone stole my idea. At that point, I just decided to walk home in the rain. The next day, I received some of the best advice I've ever gotten in my life. I had my mentor meeting with some of the amazing advisors. I remember entering that room and telling my string of events. One of the advisors stood up and said, everyone clear the room. I need to talk to Bryce alone. He sat down beside me, looked me in the eyes and said, you've been pretty beat. But you know what? You've got 48 hours. 48 hours to do whatever it takes. Cry, scream, kick, yell, and come back with a plan fueled by that failure. I remember leaving this event thinking, this is it. I can do this. I can save my team. And I did. I went out that week and I signed on one of the biggest gyms across Ontario to replace their meters with ours. And I thought, I saved everything. But I need to go home. I'm out of capital and I need to talk to my team. So I flew home. And then I had a meeting with the accelerator as soon as I go home to find out that they will not allow me in the program if I'm not home. So if I'm not in Kitchener. And then I found out the gym didn't want to do business with me because I wasn't affiliated with the program anymore. I lost everything for a second time because I left to go home to Winnipeg. Here's a photo of my last day in the office. My friend saw how miserable I was and ended up writing S in front of Advolf to say Sadvolf. Timing could have been more perfect. At the time, losing that relationship with my best friend was my biggest fuck up. I was mad at him. I was livid. He promised me. But I realized the hard way that sometimes you do need to let go. And that failure is okay. But 4 years later, I realized that my biggest fuck up wasn't just losing my friend and my business. My biggest fuck up was leaving a city I've never felt more at home. There's a part of me still out there, and I know deep down inside it's where I'm supposed to be. I made a promise. I made a promise to myself that one day I'll go back out there because I believe that my next success is waiting for me within that city. Now, I say this to myself as I think back about my time in Kitchener and ask myself, can things really get worse than this? Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Bryce.
Well, thank you for having me.
There's a lot there,
Yeah, it's an outrageous story, eh? There's
absolutely.
A lot going on.
but you lived it. You lived it.
I was there. I was definitely there.
So we're starting the Q&A now. So I'm going to do some Qs. You're going to do some As.
Sounds
And first Q right out of the gate is, so you're like marketing guy, right?
Yeah.
You got obsessed with this like marketing, and you've had a couple marketing businesses. So my first question is, what is that new thing in marketing that you're seeing on the horizon? Don't give away any secrets, because I know that you can get ripped off. I've heard about that happen.
Yeah.
But like,
no one steal my idea, please.
Yeah, please don't. But what is that new thing in marketing that you see?
Yeah, that's really great. So I'm really invested in the e-commerce world right now. I feel like that's my field when it comes down to marketing, and I've studied a lot because of that. When it comes down to e-commerce, I think automation is huge, especially in AI. So, aside from my pitch coaching business, I also work for Master Code, and we do artificial intelligence with chatbots.
Okay.
What's really unique about that is you apply that to e-commerce, you can really automate the conversation, marketing and sales and so forth. So we're moving more into needing less humans and more of an automated process through AI.
So it's like having a salesperson on call all the time, but that's just the AI is the salesperson.
Yeah, that's like tip of the iceberg, but there's a lot more underneath it when it comes down to carrying that conversation and engaging and pushing a user through that funnel.
And is the idea to have it be so that I don't know that I'm talking to an AI?
Not just yet. I mean, it's usually better when you know when you're talking to a robot.
Yeah.
It's
Because then you're not like being dishonest or anything.
Yeah,
like
that's just it, right? There's less anger at that point.
Right. Yeah. You're like, oh, it's just a machine. Can't get mad. All right. So then I have another question about accelerator programs in general, because it sounds like this was a great opportunity that you had at, what was it called? Computech? Communitech. Sorry. And but then it kind of went sour. So do you feel as though you would still trust going into an accelerator program?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a new program called Rev, and it was a sales accelerator for people who had X amount of dollars and ready to grow. So it was very new.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I can go into that part of the story, but it was in infancy stages.
Right. Okay. So it was just starting out, and that's why maybe there were some bumps along that road.
They fucked up.
Oh, yeah, they did.
Yeah, I mean, they told me that, and in the end, I fucked up because of their fuck up. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if they were like, "Oh, Bryce, we're sorry we fucked up. Please come back," you would.
I mean, do I get the money?
It's not guaranteed.
Okay.
So another question. This one coming from the chat. This is coming in right away. So looking back at Advolve Media, is that?
Yep.
So what were your lessons learned
Yeah.
as far as that specific company? Not the lessons learned as far as specifically with the fuck up, I guess, but like what were the lessons learned?
Yeah, I got two big ones out of that, actually.
Okay.
One, don't listen to the media. I mean, all that hype and attention, like I said, just makes you feel, raises your ego to the point where you're not listening to your market. Always listen to your customer, talk to your customer first. I can say I love your product, I can say I love your idea, but what we think doesn't matter. What the market thinks does matter. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the second point is timing. Timing does not matter. Everyone thinks timing matters. I'm not talking about Uber or Airbnb. I mean, that's a rush to the market.
Like the first of the market.
Exactly, right? But I mean, for usually majority of every other idea out there, people are trying to rush, but timing is never an issue, right? Grow, learn your market, get out there, raise the capital you need to do, but don't try to rush everything because you're going to make some poor decisions.
Right, because you're going to rush past listening to your customer. Is that so? How would you have? What steps do you think that you would have taken to like not believe the hype, and listen to your customers or the market?
Yeah,
Like how would you, if you were like, oh, I could go back and I could.
Yeah.
How would you have done that?
You know, I talk about this all the time when I'm helping startups, is that you always need to sell before you build. That's the biggest thing. A lot of people and a lot of us love to go out there and build the technology, build the company, do the part that's fun, and then when all that app and technology is built, we go and find out that, A, the customer wants it or doesn't, right?
Yeah.
So what I love to do is I love to go out and sell before we even have anything.
Right.
Right. I did the previous startup. I mean, we had a napkin drawing, and I sold close to $750,000 in 30 days just selling a fake concept, like vaporware, we call it in the industry.
Yeah. So that way, so you're selling it, and then you can go back and go, this is what we need to build.
Yeah.
This is what they want.
I mean, bring that to any investor saying, I paying customers or LOIs or anything like that. they're going to invest in you before you even have a product instead of having the product in the ladder.
Okay. So do you have some vaporware right now?
I mean, I can sell you on so many things.
Okay. How did you learn from failure? This is the question here. What advice do you have for someone self-assessing after the fact?
My biggest learning from failure is you got to embrace it. I mean, fail forward, these are such buzzwords in the industry, but the thing is that people still are scared to fail, right?
Yeah.
I mean, my first time on stage, my first time starting a company, I have zero clue what I was doing, right? I mean, if I started a company today, majority of us, even myself, will probably be fumbling a bit in the dark. But you have to be okay with just screwing everything up and put everything on the line. I truly believe on that scale of polarization where, I mean, when you're going on testing and validating an idea, if you're playing in the middle, you're going to try to tailor to everyone, and that's not going to take off. Pick a side. If there are people that absolutely love you, we call them your evangelists, and there are going to be people who actually hate you at the same time, right? And that causes, accelerated failure because people get in their own minds and so forth. But the whole purpose of this here is to fail as quickly as possible, test your market by polarizing, and then fail quick.
Fail quick, but don't make the product too quick.
Correct, yeah.
Product slow, fail quick.
Find your customers as fast as possible.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Find your customers as fast as possible.
Test, ask them.
Test.
Exactly.
Vapor. All right. So let's see. Next question. How did you pick yourself and show confidence in yourself and your business product to move forward successfully?
For sure. So
how did you pick yourself?
Yeah, I'm going to reword that a bit. So how did I develop my confidence in my business and be able to move that, and I guess in a successful trajectory? Let's say that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that was what your question was. I'm sure.
I'm assuming that's what you meant.
Yeah, that's
here.
what you mean.
It really came from, from the previous question as well too. It really came from just screwing up and being okay with it. When it comes down to pitching, I've been booed off stage. I've been asked to leave. I've been said this is the worst pitch I've ever heard in my life.
So in the beginning stages, when you were up there failing quickly, let's say, and you didn't have like the experience, how did you pick yourself up? How did you give yourself that confidence that you needed? Because as you were saying, you're asked to leave. You're being booed off stage. Like, how did you just stick with it?
I don't. It's part of the personality, I guess. I mean, wish I had an answer for that. But I mean, I hate when I don't know something, and I hate when I can't figure out an answer or why I'm not good at something or why something's not working. So I'm going to keep trying at it. You go. I move fast. I talk fast.
I noticed that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not calming or slowing down. I mean. But at the same time, I mean, because of that, I think I do so many things at once. A lot of times it's kind of suppressing a lot of the fails and forgetting about them. But, I mean, if you just keep and always have multiple plates moving, I like to call it, right? Multiple things going on at the same time, you're not going to focus on those failures. You're going to focus on the plates that are still up and spinning. So I say just tackle multiple things at once. Figure the ones that are going to continue spinning if we're keeping up with the metaphor and which are going to fail and go forward.
Don't worry about the smashed plates on the stage. Keep the ones spinning on the poles. Oh, great. So one last question then. What lasting impact would you want to have on your hometown?
Great question here. And I've traveled all over the world, and I've been part of accelerators, obviously the one in Canada, and taught and coached in the ones like in Vietnam and the States. And what I think that we need to have here when it comes to impact in Winnipeg is just more deal flow.
And what do you mean by deal flow?
Deal flow is... We don't have enough investors. We don't have no venture capitalists and not enough angel investors to invest in the brilliant minds that are here. And we don't because two things happen. People leave Winnipeg. It happens, right?
They do.
And, I mean, there's more money out in bigger cities like Toronto, right? I've been there and I saw it at the same time. And there's more talent too, and there's more going on. So what I need for deal flow is we need more people doing things here, leaving Winnipeg. Hang on.
Yeah,
right?
I'm with you.
Building their networks, but bringing that back, right? Because here's the theory behind here, is that if you actually start going out and people are asking, where are these amazing people coming from? And these investors are asking where these ideas and entrepreneurs coming from, and they find them from Winnipeg, they're eventually going to come down to the root source, right? We need to spread out our network and not confine so much. Build who we are, build those networks, and bring tech and people back here.
So the people that are finding the success in other cities, bigger markets, don't forget your roots. Come back and nourish those roots. Because Winnipeg, we're a great incubator for these great people with great ideas. So,
I agree, yeah.
So let's do that. All right, I think that's a great place to end on. Thank you, Bryce.
Thank you so much for having me.
Great talk.
All right.
All
Cheers.
right. bring on our next speaker. Our next speaker, he played for the U of M Bison back in the day, it was basketball. But now he spends most of his time playing ultimate frisbee, which is so much better than basketball. And he once shared a stage with the world-famous illusionist, David Copperfield. Please, let's hear it for Yacine Bara.
Thanks so much, Stephen. So let me take you back a little bit down memory lane to when I was a child growing up right here in Winnipeg. I was the kind of kid that other kids get compared to when they're being lectured by their parents. Good grades, good athlete, didn't get into trouble. On Friday evenings during my high school years, you'd be more likely to catch me at home doing extra math problems for fun than to be out sort of testing the waters of teenage rebellion. Now, if you hadn't figured it out from the photo, I wasn't what you'd call cool, but nonetheless, I was sort of your garden variety high achiever, top of my class, flying through school and university on the straight and narrow for success. So it was that this smooth operator you'll see in the next photo was lucky enough to start his career where every kid dreams they will, at the big insurance company, obviously. I had studied to be an actuary, which is kind of like being a movie star, roughly, except the exact opposite of that. More specifically, an actuary is someone who puts a dollar value on risk. And actually, it's a great career. I had picked it because it came with a stable, secure, comfortable lifestyle. And I was lucky enough to have that option because of my success in early life. Everything was awesome. And yet, through the first decade of my career, I tended to think of work and life as kind of two separate things. My job enabled me to do the things that I wanted to do outside the office, play sports, hang out with friends, travel, that kind of thing. Truth be told, I mostly avoided thinking or talking about work when I wasn't there. So everything was awesome. Flash forward, it's 2016, more than a decade into my stable, secure corporate career. I've just recently taken a new job, and my personal life is a mess. I'm going through a divorce. My professional life is no better. I'm in crisis mode, struggling to find meaning in the corporate world. It's hit me that all along I've been playing the wrong game and been too busy winning to realize it. I mean, what have I really done with my life so far? Hit the jackpot and being born where I was born, or having the parents that I do? Walk through a bunch of doors that I had no real part in opening? I'm angry at this point, with the corporate world, with the success narrative, and with myself. It's a Friday morning in October of that same year, and I'm sitting in a meeting, and it just sucks. It's not the first time, of course, but this is the first time I'm really sort of realizing it. The meeting is pointless, especially unimportant topic, too many people, the usual stuff. It doesn't help that this new job that I'm about half a year into is not what I thought it would be. The work is hopelessly boring, which has been giving me lots of time to stew over just how boring it is. So eventually the meeting ends, and I've had it up to here kind of thing. I can't take any more for the day. I make up an excuse, and I leave for the day. This is Mr. Honor Roll himself, playing hooky for the first and only time in his working life. So for the next 24 hours, I have a minor meltdown, sort of alternating between self-pity and panic. Then it hits me. I can't take any more, period. And I have an idea. So I go back into the office on Sunday, clean out my desk, send an email saying essentially, it's not you, it's me, and I never go back. On the first day after my daring escape, I'm psyched, I'm pumped. I go on a long walk, stopping poetically outside my now former office building, which is super cheesy. I'm overcome with excitement for my big idea, which is a new kind of nonprofit. When you think about it, charities always need money, right? Why couldn't they make their own? Couldn't I start a typically for-profit business and use the profits instead for social good? So I set out to do just that. I'm going to build a financial advisory business that redirects its profits in support of charitable causes. And it's the perfect idea. I'm going to change the world. I'm going to use all the skills I've acquired in my career so far. And in the process, my work's going to go from spiritually empty to being suddenly supercharged with meaning. So I work as hard as I've ever worked, and I love every second of it. Okay, now everything is awesome. So I dive into making a logo, a website, a marketing pitch. The setbacks start pretty early on, but just the usual types of hiccups that every new business faces. It's what's supposed to happen. After all, entrepreneurship is all about battling through adversity, right? It's okay, I stay focused, getting out into the community to tell as many people as I can about my new concept. But I'm having trouble kind of getting my point across. People in the financial services industry don't get me. The nonprofit sector isn't sure what to make of me. I struggle to get people to see what I see. On the customer side, I go way out of my comfort zone. I mean, here I am, a career-long spreadsheet guy, now wearing sales, marketing, customer service hats. I feel pushy when I'm trying to sell, totally lost when trying to come up with social media content, just generally out of my element. I mean, I'm trying my best, and it's just tough. My friends and family seem, at least to me, to be sort of vaguely sympathetic, which I take to mean that they're sure I've lost my mind. And in fairness, who walks away from a six-figure corporate gig, a comfortable, successful life for this? For 18 months, my savings dwindle and my anxiety mounts. I'm working myself to exhaustion, just hanging on to this idea, and I'm not getting anywhere. And one day, it finally dawns on me. Dude, nobody cares. The first rule of starting a business is that you're supposed to make something that people want. Turns out the whole time I was making something that only I wanted. So, having realized that, I began the process of winding it down. Now, for all the struggle that led up to that point, the end of the chapter was pretty uneventful. All I had to do was sort of venture out into the job market, and pretty quickly I'd landed a great job at SkipTheDishes, which has been an awesome experience. So that was lesson number one when the dust settled. I'm exactly as lucky in this world as I thought I was. I took a risk, failed, and the stable, comfortable life was right there waiting to take me back. I learned that failing on my own terms with big ambition to help others honestly felt like way more of a win than just taking the safe path and just simply reaping the rewards of a life I was born into. So if you think about it, it seems to me that you can't really fail in the pursuit of meaning, because in doing so, there's meaning in the failure itself. I also learned that the big idea that I had of a business with a social purpose, well, that has a name. It's called a social enterprise, and there's a thriving community of those doing great work right here in Winnipeg. So if I were to rewind the clock, I would, for starters, pick a different business concept. I had been trying to give people a new way to help each other, and while I still believe that helping people is something that fundamentally people want to do, it's clear to me now that the specific itch I was trying to scratch didn't exist. I would also not put so much pressure on myself. I mean, yeah, I was born really fortunate, true, but being in a mad rush to somehow make up for that is a good way to help nobody. Otherwise, I wouldn't change much, to be honest. Failure in a specific sense always constitutes progress in other ways. You know, gaining knowledge and wisdom, building character, the things that bring us here this evening. So that's why I'm not the only one with a story of big failure and little regret. So in the end, if you ask me, what's worse than fucking up? Well, that's easy. Only ever doing things that you can't fuck up. Thank you.
Thank you, Yacine. That was great.
Thank you so much.
was
Thanks
great.
for having me.
Yeah, well, it's great to have you. Yeah. So the first question that I wanted to ask is, so you were officially trained as an actuary?
That's right.
That's
Yeah, you got it.
not necessarily a very, I haven't heard of an actuary before.
Sure, yeah.
But I'm sure everyone watching knows for sure.
Yeah.
But it's something to do with risk management or risk,
Yeah, the way that I was thinking about it was, it's basically you put a dollar value on risk. That's the general description. Actuaries work in insurance. They're the ones who price insurance and put a dollar value on liabilities, all the exciting things. you
Yeah,
know?
super exciting.
Yeah, really exciting.
So, so I guess the question is kind of with that, because you took a big risk.
Yeah.
Right. So were you crunching the numbers?
I crunched.
with your own risk. Where you're
Yeah.
like, oh, I wouldn't insure myself.
I
or-
crunched approximately 0 numbers.
You're
before
like,
I jumped off.
I'm
Yeah.
a professional actuary, but I am not going to look at any of the risk
Yeah.
I'm about to jump into.
Yeah, the only calc here is I'm calculating that it was about 0 numbers that I crunched before taking the plunge.
You're like, 0.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Even. All right. All right. So there's a question up here from our viewers. What made you make the jump from the founder of Change Wealth to back to the corporate world at SkipTheDishes? So yeah, what was it like? Like, oh, I'm going to jump back in.
Yeah, and I'm thinking the emphasis of the question is kind of going from, solo startup, that kind of thing, right back into corporate, where corporate was the thing I was trying to get away from in the first place.
That's
right?
a way better way to put in the question.
Just want to make sure I understand. But yeah, ultimately, when I joined Skip, which was 2.5 years ago or so now, it was sort of at the tail end of like startup mode still, I would say. And
Of Skip.
Right. So Skip was started in like 2012, and by 2018, it had done a lot of cool stuff, and it was one of the sort of Winnipeg success stories, startup success stories. It sort of fit. I needed a job with a stable paycheck, and it was a company that was doing really interesting work. And it wasn't very corporate, actually, but more resembling, I guess, some of the companies I had worked with previously than being in startup mode. So fair question.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was like, this is like I'm going back to corporate, but it's not so corporate.
That's basically it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. And that's making you happy.
Yeah, it was great
Great.
then. It's great now. It's a pretty relaxed, casual atmosphere. It's not very corporate by contrast to, some of the companies I guess I've worked at in the past. So
That you would leave with just sending an email.
something like that. Yeah.
The next question here. What is a particular failure you think everyone should experience because the lessons from it are valuable for everyone? So,
Yeah.
it's kind of like a hard question to wrap your brain around, but
Well, I mean, a particular failure. I think
what failure would you recommend?
Yeah, it's funny, right? Because I think that failure, I mean, obviously we're here to reflect on the growth that comes from failure. I would recommend not failing if you can avoid it. However, if you're going to fail,
Unavoidable. I think that's the lesson here. I think maybe another way of putting it would be what failures do you think people should go through, or what growth? Maybe failure is the wrong word, right? What are the lessons people need to learn?
I'll tell you what. So I was saying to somebody today in conversation that I find that growth, in my experience, comes from discomfort. So whether it's failure or otherwise, putting yourself in positions of discomfort is where there's a ton of growth to be had. And so I would strongly recommend that. And that generally means putting yourself in an environment where you don't have the answers, you're new, you're sort of very green and uncomfortable.
Yeah, and I think that's it right there. Instead of saying, "Oh, make yourself uncomfortable," you're not saying go out and feel pain.
No.
But get out of your comfort zone.
You got it.
Yeah, try something new, learn a new language, or try some new food.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. That's good. Another question here: how would you encourage more social entrepreneurship in Winnipeg? Obviously, it's something close to your heart.
Yeah, I mean, I can't take a lot of credit for the
You invented the whole sector. It sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, my involvement in social entrepreneurship was I had big aspirations. It was a project at that time, and I think what I want to emphasize is that there's so many people doing such great work in the social entrepreneurship sector to this day. So those folks would be, better placed to answer the question. However, I think that social enterprise as a model, it's basically a business with a social purpose.
Yeah.
I think what you find is that there's a lot of win-win to be had, right? Where you're solving a problem for a customer or a user, and then ultimately the purpose of the business returns something to the community or to the environment, as the case may be. So there's a ton of win-win, and sometimes the underlying purpose of the business can actually be part of the sort of value proposition that gets people interested in being a customer in the first place. So I think for me, number one is just having more awareness of the concept of social enterprise is a good thing. When I got into this world, I had never heard the term myself.
Right. You thought that you had invented it. in a
Something
way.
like that, yeah. I
which is
thought-
great. That's
yeah,
great.
It was an interesting thing. I ended up having I went to talk to somebody at a local organization early on, and I explained the concept, and they sort of said, "Oh, a social enterprise," and I went, "I don't know what that is, but that might be it."
No, it's the Yacine
Yeah,
enterprise.
It was more that I went and did my research, and I was like, that's it.
That's
And for some
exactly-
reason,
yeah.
it's not a commonly known term or sector. Tons of potential there, and really, really cool work that happens, every day.
And it would be growing. So maybe, do you have any shout outs to any local social entrepreneur or some of that?
Yeah, so
that's
there's a
happening in
network.
Winnipeg?
Maybe the easiest thing is to shout out the network of the Canadian
Yeah.
Community Economic Development Network. Has a thriving, constituency here in Winnipeg and in Manitoba, which is
Oh, great.
it's a network of a bunch of different social enterprises, nonprofits, charities, that kind of thing that do just awesome work. And so I would recommend that people check that out.
Okay, and that's Googleable.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay,
yeah.
great.
CEDNet is the acronym, CCED net.
CCED net.
Yeah,
Check it out.
you got it.
Okay, so another question here. That the question on the screen is that's it for submitted questions. So that's my fuck up right now. Well, then I have a question about ultimate frisbee.
Sure.
Do you feel as though your skill set transitioning from basketball really did lend itself to ultimate?
Yeah, that's fair to say. I think a lot of people that pick up the sport of ultimate frisbee do so as adults, as I did, with friends or classmates or whatever it is. And yeah, a lot of people come from different sports backgrounds, which was made the transition easy for me. I like the game just because it's fun, but
It's kind of like the social enterprise of sports too, right?
explain
Right.
that. I like that.
Well, because there's no ref,
Yeah.
right? You're calling your own things, and
Yeah.
you've got to be more honest. There's a more social aspect to it in general. So
Yeah, for those not familiar, I mean,
it's Googleable.
it's Googleable. The underlying, philosophy is one where it's sort of self-officiated, meaning everybody who's playing is charged with preserving the integrity of the game, I guess is the way you'd think about that. So
Yeah. So I think that there's a parallel there.
something, yeah,
I think
yeah, you're
I
not
think-
wrong. I like it.
Okay, good.
You're onto
Cool.
something.
Yeah, I think we're both onto something here. Okay, well, I think that's good. A good place to
Right on.
end it, unless there's something else that you want to say right now.
No, thanks for having me. This is a lot of fun.
It was great having you.
Right on.
Yeah, thank you, Yacine.
Thanks.
Well, it's time for our last speaker, and I think we're ready for our last speaker. She has lived in more than 15 countries across 5 continents. She has learned Spanish before she learned English, and she's nearly done her 2020 goal of reading 10 new books, and so she welcomes any suggestions for her 2021 list. You can message her on LinkedIn with those recommendations. Seriously, you should do that. She wants your recommendations. Or on the chat, even. Just list some books. She needs that. Let's hear it for Vanesa Cotlar.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Stephen. Now let me take you back to when it all started. Back in 2013, I was applying for my dream job, management consulting. The process was exhausting. Putting together the perfect resume, cover letter, applying for jobs sucks. Every rejection felt like a gut-wrenching punch to my confidence. Fortunately, the hard work paid off when I landed my dream job at Monitor Deloitte. I would be a strategy consultant helping the world's largest companies with their strategy. I couldn't believe it. I was so excited. From day one, my peers called me partner Vanesa because they thought I would never leave Deloitte. And honestly, neither did I. In 2018, I took a 1-year sabbatical from Deloitte to join Remote Year, a 12-month global remote working program. I was meant to come back to Deloitte after this year. During this 12-month journey, I lived across Asia, Northern Africa, Europe, Latin America, moving every month. I felt so lucky that I had the possibility to travel around the world with 35 other people while keeping a job. During this journey, I met Neil, who had also experienced similar frustrations in hiring. And together, we began to work on an idea to change the way that people apply for jobs. And that's how Octagon Careers was born. Octagon Careers was an app that enabled applicants to apply for jobs without the need for a resume or cover letter. Instead, candidates used a challenge-based approach that enabled them to get to know the role and the company better, and the company, the candidate, and their skills and experience. It was win-win. When we were wrapping up remote year, close to the end of it, we had a tough decision to make. Continue with a startup full-time or go back. Me to Toronto, to my job that I loved so much at Deloitte. Neil to the UK, to being an immigration lawyer. Now, to make the decision even more complicated, Neil and I had also started dating at this time. So we said, okay, let's make a list of all the global accelerator programs. Let's choose some. If we get into the programs we look at, we'll do this full time. Out of this huge spreadsheet, we landed on 3 programs, one in Germany, one in Malaysia, and one in Toronto. Through the application process for the Toronto-based program, we met our 3rd team member who brought in the technical skill we needed to actually build our product. When we were in Mexico City, in the last month of remote year, I got an email from the German-based program. I opened it, and it said, congratulations, we were in. I started jumping up and down. I was so excited. People thought I'd gone crazy. But of over 250 companies, Octagon Careers was selected. Neil and I quit our jobs on the same day. I left my job that I loved so much at Deloitte, found an Airbnb, we packed our bags, booked the flights, we were ready to go. And 2 weeks before leaving, our 3rd team member told us he couldn't come. The accelerator program in Germany said that without a technical person on the team, our acceptance was revoked. So we went right into problem-solving mode. We reached out to everyone in our remote year network because we knew there were a lot of developers. And thankfully, we met Chad, our tech savior. He was wrapping up a project in Asia and said he would join our team in Germany to build Octagon Careers. We landed in Leipzig, Germany in February 2019. And after 2 weeks of bootcamp-style sessions with the other founders and companies, I noticed 2 things. First, we were by far the earliest stage company there. We had no product yet. And second, we were the only company that didn't have a German speaker on our team. This put a fire under me. As CEO of Octagon Careers, I was now responsible for the livelihood of these 2 people that had left their jobs for here in Germany we needed to be successful. So we dove into development very quickly. Our product was built for 2 users, candidates applying for jobs and companies receiving their information. And within 2 months, we had a product ready for piloting. People loved our product. And we loved how much they loved it. But to get to that user-ready stage so quickly, we had to make one compromise. When we were building the product, we realized we weren't actually building for just 2 users, but for 3. The third was us, the admins, because we needed an interface to actually build these challenges that candidates were taking. So what was the compromise? We built a backend for all 3, but the front end only for companies and candidates. This meant that every single challenge had to be hard-coded into Octagon Careers. This worked fine until it didn't, because companies started asking if they could build their own challenges. They didn't want to rely on us to be building them every single time. I couldn't believe that I hadn't thought about this possibility that my customer might see the product in this way. We were about 3 months in when Chad told us he had to leave us. Unfortunately, we still had no funding. We were very early stage, and he needed a way to make money. So he left with a promise of returning once we had that funding. We had such a strong reliance, though, on needing someone to build that interface for the admins because companies were asking for it that we said, okay, we'll find some way to get a cheap junior developer subsidized through some grants, a student. They'll come in. It'll be okay. And then things got worse. When I was 17, I had scoliosis fusion surgery for a curvature in my spine. Since then, I'd lived totally fine with 2 titanium rods, 16 screws, and a connector bar in the middle. When I say totally fine, I mean so fine that less than a year prior, I'd hiked Machu Picchu. But as luck would have it, on a Saturday morning at the gym, I started hearing a strange cracking noise in my back. And I'm the type of person that likes to push these things down. They're going to go away. I don't have to do anything about it, but the noise didn't go away. So eventually I went to the hospital. The first thing they said to me was, ma'am, we need you to stop walking. You definitely have some broken metal in your back. You might have a broken spine. I felt as though I was in the middle of nowhere in a hospital in Leipzig, Germany, where I could barely understand what the doctor was saying. I had a broken product I couldn't fix. I had a broken back I couldn't fix. What? I failed Neil. I failed Chad. This company that was meant to be this great success that I'd left everything behind for. The job that I left at Deloitte that I loved so much, that I cared so much for. All for what? For this? For nothing. What would people think of me? Neil and I had to make a quick decision. At this point, we'd been dating for over a year, and we packed our bags and headed to Winnipeg so I could get my back properly looked at. I landed in Winnipeg in a wheelchair. And honestly, I felt worse than I looked. I felt the failure all around me and within me. Thankfully, my back ended up being okay. The doctor said it was just broken metal, and turns out you can live with that. But travel was off the table, and so was returning to Germany, at least for a bit. So Neil and I sat down and thought, could we start this back up in Winnipeg? I hadn't lived here in nearly 10 years, and it was Neil's first time living in Canada. We had such limited connections, and honestly, we were exhausted. So I reached out, one last attempt to get our company back on track, to our German-based pilots to see if they would work with us still. And they said yes. They would work with us if we could be in Germany in person. This was before COVID, when you still needed that in-person connection to build these types of business relationships. So, with no prospects and very little sleep, we ceased operations. I still think about Octagon careers, but over time, I've learned to stop wondering the what-ifs. Although my business, my baby didn't grow, I grew so much as a person, and there's 3 key lessons that I'd like to share with you. First, speed isn't always the number one thing. Even in a very early stage startup, your customers are. We've spoken with hundreds of them, but we should have spoken with more. We shouldn't have missed that angle, that possibility of how they would see our product. 2, it's so important to have the clarity and the commitment and stake of a founding team. We knew from the beginning that Neil and I were the co-founders of Octagon Careers, but we should have clarified Chad's equity stake in the business. It's better to have less of something successful than more of something unsuccessful. 3, when you're thinking of starting a business, it is so much work to start a business. I know it may look glamorous on social media. You see the awards, you see the conferences, the presentations, but in reality, you work way more than any other job, and you get paid way less, often zero. That said, that unique experience, the ability to build your idea from nothing into something, and gets you out of bed in a way that nothing else does. Now, I'd like to close with one broader learning. I recently found a diary from when I was 11 years old, and I'd like to share a short excerpt with you. I'm terrified. What if I fail? That won't be good, not at all. Really, I'm scared. Help. Help. All caps, half a page of a child's diary. I was 11 years old. What was I so scared of? I was so scared of failing a science test because it would mean the end of a world. At the end of my world. Our fear of failure comes at such a young age, and it is up to us to change that. I'm really grateful for you taking the time to listen to all of our stories this evening, because it is by listening to stories about failure and sharing our stories of failure that we make failure accepted and encouraged. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was great. Okay, so the first question that I have is, well, it's about the remote learning. You went, or not the remote learning, sorry,
Remote year.
the
Yeah,
remote
yeah.
year, the
Yeah, yeah.
whole year, all over the place, and that was, what, like 2 years ago?
Yeah, all of 2018.
All of 2018. So it was like this intense, like pre-COVID, I'm going to work remotely before everyone else is.
Yeah.
So you're a little bit of a remote expert.
It's I'm taking that as a question. I'm
Oh,
going to
no,
put that question mark.
well,
No, are you telling me?
No, I'm
It's a
I'm telling you that you are.
I am,
So then the
okay.
question
Yeah,
is,
yeah.
maybe you have a couple like little tips that you learned before that then you got to like put into practice or see be put into practice.
Yeah, it's a really good question because I would say when COVID hit and so many people moved to working from home, I received a lot of messages about this. And they said, Vanessa, you worked remotely for a year. Could you tell me, like, what did you do? How did you do this? How did you do that?
Yeah.
And the first thing that I said is it's very different when you intentionally choose to work remotely than when all of a sudden you're working remotely
Yeah,
unexpectedly.
yeah.
So there was a lot of planning and preparation that had gone for me to feel ready to do that. So of course there were like the weekly check-ins, learning to do video calls, being more mindful of time zones. When you're working in Asia with people that are in Canada, you have to be willing to stay up a little bit later. But I think that when we think about remote work in the context of today, it feels different because back then we could explore so much. And that was part of the advantage of remote year. We got to see all these cities as we were working. Whereas I think
Yeah.
here right now it's more
You get to see your living room.
You get to see your living room, exactly. So it's totally different from the standpoint of like what strategies do you need to be successful in your everyday? Because before it was get your work done as quickly as you could so you could go see this beautiful city. Whereas here it's, well, actually you can do whatever you want throughout your day and spread out your work maybe a little bit in the morning, take another chunk in the afternoon, take a bigger break for dinner with the family and work a little bit more at nighttime. So I think that the strategies for success are a little bit different.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, it would be a different, because you're going through a different thing.
For sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, we have a question from the chat here. So how valuable were the contacts that you made in those far-off places compared to the connections that you've made here in Winnipeg? So traveling remotely, I guess you had a cohort that you traveled
Yeah.
with. So I guess that could apply to that, the contacts that you made with that cohort or in those other places.
Yeah, for sure. So it's actually really interesting because we did travel as a cohort of 35.
Which sounds also amazing.
It was awesome, yeah. But also in each city, we did events so that we got to know the business community. So I actually did build connections in every city that I traveled to.
Wow.
So when thinking about the, I guess, how strong those connections are versus like some of the ones that I've built in Winnipeg, I actually think there's an interesting parallel because anytime that anyone from Winnipeg is looking to go to any of these places, I'm like, yeah, let me know, where are you going? Okay, I'll connect you with someone. And I always find that I have this global network that I can help to connect others with. I think part of it is I was just so impressed by how welcoming Winnipeg was when I came back. To me and to some of the people that I meet, it's crazy that it's been just over a year since I've been back in the city. And I think there's a very unique feeling of community and that sense of belonging here. So I think for me, I feel like I'm very much of Winnipeg, but with a global network that I'm always happy to make those connections with.
Right, because how long were you in Toronto before so you went from Winnipeg to Toronto?
So I went to Queens for school as well. So I was gone, yeah.
Years and years
Yeah,
and years.
years and years and years,
Okay,
yeah.
right. Okay, well, let's see what the next question here is. From the chat, when do you know when it's time to quit? Is it the lack of funds or the lack of support or a third thing that we don't know? How do you know? Because it's hard to quit,
Yeah,
right?
it's really hard to quit. And I think it's different in different situations. So if I think back to our experience when knowing where to quit, definitely I think sometimes companies just have to quit due to funds because there's nothing else that you can do, right? You can't keep going.
Yeah,
There's no way.
You run out of steam.
You run out,
yeah.
exactly. So I would say like that's a common reason why it would happen. But I mean, equally, you may have started a business that didn't really require that much upfront investment, and you're just finding there's no customers. So maybe there wasn't product market fit. So if you're finding that what you're building, no one wants, that's also a good sign that perhaps it
Right,
makes sense to quit.
because ideally, I guess you would want to quit before you ran out of money. It's not
For
like,
sure.
oh, let's just run this until we're completely dry.
Yeah, and I think for us, what it was, honestly,
Yeah.
we we're so tired. Like I always say, I worked so hard that my back literally cracked.
It's true.
And that's what happened because it was so much work and energy. So sometimes it's, really thinking about the situation and what's in front of you and understanding, do I need to take on additional team members or is it really that time to quit? But I think it does depend on the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, there is another question here. Do you think there is an amount of time you should allot to finding and understanding your target market before you go full force with your product or idea?
That's a really good question. And when it comes to understanding your market, I think it's interesting because we spoke with so many customers before we started building anything.
Yeah, that's what you were saying.
Yeah, and we were speaking with customers around the world as we traveled.
Which is a huge advantage.
Which was amazing, yeah. So we spoke with different HR leaders in Asia, then in Northern Africa, in Europe, in Latin America, and we had done so much research to understand the trends to try to build something that we thought would be like a good product globally for how it could be built.
Yeah.
But it shifted so much because the idea that we started with was not what we actually ended up building because we got so much feedback as to what it was that would be the most helpful.
So your initial idea for Octagon Careers
was totally different.
Was different.
Oh yeah, it was totally different.
What was the original?
Yeah, so
what was the original seed of the idea?
That's a really good question. So there's in that slide with all the photos, there was like a little picture of Post-it notes.
Yep.
Neil and I had actually gone. We were in Vietnam, and we went to this place in the middle of nowhere in Ninh Binh. And there was literally like no power at nighttime. It was very much nowhere. We went just to ideate and think. And the original concept that we had landed on was like a way to improve employee engagement and employee experience. And we had like all of these concepts and this model and how it was going to work. But when we started testing with our potential customers and walking through the idea, the piece that ended up resonating most was how difficult it was for people to get into companies and the application process and the hiring components of how difficult it was to go through all of those resumes and cover letters and find those really great people that then would make great employees. So our conversations kept going back to that piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
I guess it might have been what was on people's mind at the time, and that's how we ended up shifting.
Right. And I think that the idea is still, even though Octagon Careers is no more, and you still think about it sometimes. And I don't mean to dig up these.
To be honest, I still think about it to the point that like I renewed the website, even though we don't have the business, because I couldn't shut down the website. I know that sounds.
You're still holding on.
I know. It's just like this thing
But
of
that's
like going to it from time to time. I just like pay the $200 and know it's there.
Yeah.
And that gives me satisfaction.
Yeah. Well, I think that the idea is still can still resonate. This idea of like, what would you call it? Like a testing-based or the
we call it challenge-based.
Challenge-based hiring or challenge. And I think that idea is still a good idea.
Yeah.
So is it possible that a phoenix could arise? You still have the website, or is somebody else running with it that you're like, they've got it?
Yeah, it's a really good question. There's a lot in the space. So when we were figuring out exactly what to build, there's a lot around gamification of hiring. So instead of starting with a resume and cover letter, some companies and some big ones that you probably don't think do this, start you off with games. So to test your risk tolerance. So an example is, you have to blow up a balloon and see how big you're willing to get it to go, because you know it's going to pop. And it shows your risk tolerance based on like how big you're willing to get the balloon.
And if you pop it, you don't get the interview.
If you pop it, you went too far. But it's just like learning to see how people react to different situations. So there's a lot in this space around finding different ways to assess candidates, and also pre-assessments based on leadership benchmarks. So there's definitely a lot happening. Not to say that there isn't space for more, but it is still a very hot market.
Yeah, okay. So we have one more question from the chat here. What advice do you have for managing an exhausting work schedule? I almost said existing. An exhausting work schedule. So remaining productive without sacrificing your personal life and well-being and breaking your back.
I mean, this seems like someone that knows me that asked this question, because I feel like if they don't, it sounds kind of like they do, because I lead such a crazy life all the time.
Okay, how do you do it?
I think part of it is finding the things that you enjoy doing. And, it's funny because not everyone enjoys the same things. And when some people say, oh, but you're speaking at this thing or you're doing that other thing at night, you went to 3 events last week, how do you do it? And for me, it's because I enjoy doing that.
Okay.
And I find that if you spend your time doing the things that you enjoy and you can fit that within kind of like your work context, it makes it more of a balance. So for me, it's like being here. I'm having a great time
Yeah,
having
this
this
is
Q&A
the-
with you, Stephen, and this is
Yeah,
awesome.
this
And
is
for
great.
me, I find this energizing. So I always
Right.
say it's important to think about the things that give you energy versus the things that take away energy,
Mm-hmm.
and to ensure you're doing enough of those that give you that energy so that you don't end up an empty bucket, right?
Yeah,
Like you
yeah.
want to be full of those things. So think about the things that energize you, and it's okay if they're not the same as other people's. You might want to just sit at home and read your book, which I do sometimes too. I'm
I
still
was
waiting
gonna
for those
say.
recommendations.
Yeah, hopefully,
Hopefully
please.
some came in. We'll see.
Recommendations. Well, thank you, Vanessa. This
Thank
has
you
been
so
great.
much.
All right.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Well, thank you everyone at home for tuning in. And thank you, I want a big thank you. A virtual round of applause for Bryce, for Yacine, for Vanessa, for a great job. Okay, okay, keep it going. Yeah, okay, that's good. That's good. I'd also like to, a huge thank you to Tech Manitoba and North Forge for joining forces and bringing this event to Winnipeg. This has been great. I love it. I'd also like to thank our sponsors, Kaput and AVent Pro, as well as Set the Bar Sales and Distribution, of course. There is a post-event survey we would love for you to fill out, and that link is available maybe on the Remo. It is. It's available on the Remo. I was right with that. And speaking of Remo, please go back and let's mix and let's mingle at the after party. Let's network on Remo. You'll be able to mix with other attendees, maybe some of the speakers, who knows. And hey, share your fuck up story. I'm sure that you have one as well. So please remember that celebrating failure is just is okay. We're all going to fail together. But I don't think that this was a failure. This has been a success. So thank you very much, and we'll see you in Remo.